Hello and welcome to Inside Politics. My name is Anastasiya Lavrina. A year ago, Washington marked a diplomatic breakthrough in the South Caucasus. The weekend, the first anniversary of that moment, was marked not simply by statements and reflections, but by renewed diplomacy at the highest level. President Ilham Aliyev held two significant telephone conversations. One with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and another with US President Donald Trump, bringing together the two central dimensions of what began in Washington on 8th of August 2025, the normalization of relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and a rapidly expanding strategic partnership between Baku and Washington. Donald Trump highly appreciated the role of President Ilham Aliyev in the peace process. The sides expressed satisfaction that peace and stability had been maintained in the region over the past year, and that there had been no incidents that could undermine peace in the region. Over the past year, Baku and Washington have moved toward a much broader strategic partnership, encompassing energy, trade, and investment, the trade corridor and regional connectivity, security cooperation, artificial intelligence, and digital infrastructure. With President Ilham Aliyev also expected to attend the G20 summit this December, attention is already turning to what comes next. So tonight on Inside Politics, we look beyond the anniversary itself. How far can the Azerbaijan-U.S. strategic partnership develop? And could the next phase be defined not by resolving conflict, but by building a new political, economic, and security architecture across the region? Joining me now is Dr. Eric Rudenschold, former U.S. National Security Council Director for Central Asia and Caspian Affairs under Presidents Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Currently, he serves as a senior fellow at the Caspian Policy Center based in Washington, D.C. Dr. Rudenschold, good evening and welcome to Inside Politics.
Hello.
Very great to have you today with us on our show. And let me start with a question about the event that took place a year ago, the Washington summit that was primarily viewed through the prism of the Azerbaijan-Armenia peace process. Today, however, we see two parallel developments: direct dialogue between Baku and Yerevan and a much broader strategic relationship emerging between Azerbaijan and the United States. What, in your view, is fundamentally different today compared with 8th of August 2025?
Well, I think we've seen a tremendous amount of cooperation take place. I think, as you say, there's two tracks. We see true cooperation between Armenia and Azerbaijan, practical issues across the board, and it's sort of a growing level of engagement between the two countries. That's something that Washington has long sought, and after the agreement a year ago, to see this kind of development, I think is very, very encouraging for policymakers here in Washington, and certainly President Trump is quite pleased with that. But at the same time, as you note, there is a much improved set of relations between Azerbaijan and Washington, and I think this is also something where we're only just sort of scratching the surface at this point. Relations have always existed, but never been as deep as I think both capitals would have liked to have seen. Now we see real change.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Rudenschold, you partially answered my next question. We know that you served at the National Security Council under both President Trump and President Biden, working directly on Central Asia and Trans-Caspian issues. So you have seen from inside how Washington traditionally approached this region. Today, President Trump and President Aliyev describe Azerbaijan-U.S. relations as having reached a qualitatively new level and acquired a strategic character. So from your experience, how significant is that language, and what has actually changed in Washington's strategic assessment of Azerbaijan?
Well, I think a lot of things have changed, to be honest. There were improvements that we saw, a decade ago between U.S. relations with the region, but what we see is sort of this, not a gradual improvement now, but we actually see a real rapid increase of engagement. Part of this is frankly due to the timing. The countries in the region have decided that they want peace and they want to move forward. That is certainly, there's nothing the United States could force upon the region. The region itself, the countries in the region have to want to get together and to work together. And so for that kind of level of awareness and dedication among President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan, that's something that was always necessary and hadn't existed, not certainly to what we have seen in recent times. But I think also, frankly, the war in Ukraine, sanctions, international sanctions, have forced the countries of Central Asia and the South Caucasus to rethink how they do business. They haven't been able to use the northern corridor transiting through Russia, which was the standard method for shipping goods in and out of the regions. And so the middle corridor was created. That did not exist during the first Trump administration. It was not possible. So although that administration was interested in strategic minerals also, there was no way to get them out of Central Asia, landlocked Central Asia. Now with the middle corridor, with Azerbaijan having transformed itself into this massive hub for transit, more things are really possible. And so you see the United States really stepping in and at this pivotal moment when more things are much more possible than they ever have been before.
So, if I'm not mistaken, in January you wrote that the TRIP framework was an important step forward, but you also pointed out that it contained no construction timeline or legally binding obligation that left sensitive questions involving customs and security unresolved. Now, some months later, President Aliyev and President Trump say Azerbaijan's transport infrastructure is nearing completion. And they also express hope that construction in Armenia will begin soon. Has your assessment changed? What specifically must happen on the Armenian side now for you to conclude that TRIP has crossed the line from political commitment to an implementable infrastructure project?
Well, certainly ground needs to be broken on the rail line, but there are also planned communication and energy links that would use that same corridor, which I think is what would really make it a transformational passageway. As I understand it, having spoken to administration officials, there is full intention to see this corridor, see ground broken for the rail line particularly, within months. And I think, contracts have to be made and certain things done, but I think that kind of engagement is absolutely critical. You build that rail line and more things become possible very quickly. And I think, the issues of customs, the kind of coordination that we already are seeing among the Central Asian states, and with the Central Asian states and Azerbaijan, Armenia just has to catch up to that. But already a lot of the groundwork for that kind of cooperation has been done. We see Turkey has played a very pivotal role with the Organization of Turkic States, that organization helping provide the framework for the kind of harmonization issues that are necessary to make this corridor more rapidly and cost effectively move freight from east to west and west to east.
You have consistently argued that Washington should stop looking at Central Asia and the South Caucasus as separate strategic spaces. So, following your response to my previous question, we can say that TRIP would connect Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan through Armenia, and the middle corridor itself extends eastward across the Caspian and into Central Asia. So from Washington's perspective, is TRIP, or as is also being called Zangezur Corridor, really about Azerbaijan and Armenia, or is the larger objective to complete an east-west trans-Caspian architecture stretching from Central Asia through Azerbaijan and Turkey toward Europe?
Well, I think it's both. I think, the beauty of the middle corridor, this trans-Caspian connectivity for transit particularly, is that it is not just one rail line. It is a network of road, rail, sea lanes that connects all parts of Central Asia across the Caspian to Azerbaijan, soon to Armenia, north to Georgia, to the Black Sea, to the south towards Turkey. It really provides remarkable connectivity for these countries in a way that they have never had before. They have always been somewhat prisoners of the infrastructure that was created during the Soviet era. And this now allows these countries options to connect in many different ways. It doesn't mean that eventually, when the war with Ukraine is over, that they'll never do business with Russia or use the Northern Corridor. It gives them lots of options.
You recently also called this the Middle Corridor movement and argued that Central Asia and the South Caucasus are effectively rewiring Eurasia. Azerbaijan is increasingly integrated with Central Asia, while TRIP could add another westward connection. So what exactly is being rewired? Are we simply seeing trade routes change, or are we witnessing a redistribution of geopolitical influence away from the traditional Russia-centered architecture of Eurasia?
Well, yes, I think you see the countries of the region actually become empowered, become sovereign countries on their own, not dependent upon the neighbor to the north, the neighbor to the east, the neighbors to the south, but simply being able to work amongst each other and to develop relations that enhance their ability to do business and to do business westward on their own terms, not terms dictated to them because they don't control the geography of the infrastructure. So I think, the connectivity that we see now is a physical manifestation of what is intellectually, I think between these countries, you see a real opening of thought in terms of how they do business, how they see the possibility of doing business. You see countries in this region talking about investment and engagement for business in ways that wasn't even imaginable 5 years ago. And that's the kind of snowball effect of being able to work together with each other in ways they haven't been able to do in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Rudenschold, Azerbaijan restoration of its territorial integrity fundamentally changed the balance in the South Caucasus, and President Ilham Aliyev subsequently shifted Baku's strategy from resolving the conflict to building a regional peace and connectivity agenda. Today, Armenia has opportunities that were largely absent during decades of confrontation. Its trade with Azerbaijan, potential access to new transport routes, normalization with Turkey, and greater economic integration with the wider region. Could one of the broader consequences of President Aliyev's post-conflict strategy therefore be that Armenia itself gains an opportunity to reduce its long-standing dependence on Russia? And is Azerbaijan paradoxically now helping create the conditions for Armenia to pursue a more independent and diversified foreign policy?
I think you're absolutely correct across the board. We already are seeing Armenia be able to question and reassess its foreign relations. I think we see them as a country starting to look to engagement westward in ways that they had not really contemplated before. They are interested in becoming EU members. They are sort of looking to pursue a number of pathways that are different from what we've seen the last 25 or 30 years. So I think that's all exciting, and I think for Armenia at this point, for its economy, this is a huge opportunity to be part of this corridor. We see it with the Central Asian states at this point. Some of the smaller economies have been held in the past somewhat hostage to existing relations and frankly, poor connectivity. That is all changing quite quickly. And I think Armenia opens up the potential. The trip corridor, why it's so important is it will more than double the capacity of the existing middle corridor that runs through Georgia. And as we see critical minerals engagement for mining in Central Asia, to be able to move those goods westward, you need more rail capacity, you need more freight capacity. And so I think, for Armenia, this is just a huge opening. And I think it is for Azerbaijan and for Turkey as well. I've spoken to a number of officials on both sides, and I think the optimism is, again, historic in so many ways.
Absolutely. Dr. Rudin showed another very important issue. President Ilham Aliyev is expected to attend the G20 summit in Miami this December as an invited leader, despite the fact that Azerbaijan not being a member of the G20. This comes at a time when Baku's role is expanding across energy security, regional connectivity, the Middle Corridor, and the links with Central Asia. So what does Azerbaijan's inclusion at the G20 tell us about its growing international weight? And what opportunities could it create for advancing the U.S.-Azerbaijan strategic partnership beyond the bilateral level?
Well, I think the invitation itself speaks volumes for the importance of Azerbaijan across this region, but I think also just simply in terms of the opportunities for deeper engagement with the United States and the other G20 members. To be invited to attend this high-level meeting is a huge step for any country. I would note that the President Tokayev of Kazakhstan, President Mirziyoyev of Uzbekistan have also joined, and I think will join G20. And I think you see a huge interest in the broader Middle Corridor region, the Trans-Caspian region. And I think particularly at G20, there's going to be a lot of attention paid to this particular region. Azerbaijan, given its strategic location on the western side of the Caspian as really the only major port on that side, it is the linchpin for all trade and transit, and frankly for gas and oil production moving across from Central Asia, moving onward towards Europe. It is a key player, and I think what we see with the United States engagement, the United States interest in engagement, is a coming of age of relations and opportunities.
So, as for now, we discussed with you all the elements of the recent developments, and we can conclude that President Trump's approach to the South Caucasus has produced significant momentum over the past year, from Washington peace breakthrough to the elevation of U.S.-Azerbaijan relations to a strategic level. You have worked across both Republican and Democratic administrations and understand how U.S. foreign policy becomes institutionalized beyond the White House. Do you see President Trump's approach to Azerbaijan and the South Caucasus gaining broader institutional support within the State Department, Congress, the U.S. business community, potentially establishing it as a lasting direction of American policy in the region?
Definitely. This is in the long-term interest of the United States to have engagement with this region in ways that deepen partnership, that help open the region, both for the countries of the region, but also for the United States to be able to do business in the region. This is a key strategic interest of all U.S. administrations. This one happens to be somewhat transactional in the way it does business. Every president has their own personality, but the kind of engagement, the quality of the engagement that you see taking place between the United States and Azerbaijan and the rest of the South Caucasus and Central Asia, this is, frankly, has always been the hope of U.S. policies and engagement. And I would say, one of the things that you need to pay attention to is the fact that how the region themselves, the countries in the regions, have changed and evolved. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the kinds of things we would be talking about were not even on the drawing board. So much has happened. A lot of this is because of the war between Russia and Ukraine, the sanctions regimes. It has enabled the countries of the region to open up, to look for other ways to do business. And I think what we see now, this deepening of partnerships between the United States and the region, is a natural consequence of that. And I think also, as you look at the countries of the region, they are looking to diversify, to open their economies, and not simply have them be landlocked and infrastructure locked the way they have been in the past.
Dr. Rudenschold, one more question I have to conclude it. From Washington's perspective, could Azerbaijan increasingly be seen as a regional guarantor of stability as well? And how important is a strong and stable Azerbaijan to the broader U.S. strategic interests across the South Caucasus and the wider Caspian region?
Well, Azerbaijan is by far the largest economy in the South Caucasus. It is strategic. Its strategic location on the Caspian Sea is absolutely vital for any commerce coming from the east. It is also a strong security partner, I think, for the United States. And as you look to the southern border with Iran, also a key interest and concern of the United States, as Russia has always been. So I think definitely the opportunities for deepening this kind of engagement between the United States and Azerbaijan, I think there's much to be written, but I think the cards are certainly showing up in the right formation.
Dr. Rudenschold, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining Inside Politics.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Well, what began in Washington a year ago has clearly moved beyond a single diplomatic moment. The recent conversations between President Ilham Aliyev and President Donald Trump demonstrate that dialogue continues at the highest level. And with the Azerbaijan-U.S. partnership expanding and another potential high-level meeting ahead in Miami, the coming months could prove important in determining what this new regional architecture will ultimately look like. That's all for tonight's Inside Politics. Thank you for watching, and I see you next time.